What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and if you're enjoying the content here on my channel, then make sure you hit the like button and make sure you hit subscribe so you can help decide what direction the content on my channel goes in the foreseeable future. So getting into the Flash Sins of the Father, this really brings us to a prelude, really the prelude to the button. Now, the cool thing about this is that in terms of being a prelude, it's one of several. Within the realm of DC Rebirth so far, there's been like an actual essential reading prelude, which if you guys are down with like the essential reading concepts, Joel over at Cape Joel does like essential reading, where it's like, here are the things that you need to read in order to understand what's going on with something, which I actually use Joel's essential reading from time to time if I'm not sure where to start with a character. So I don't know if Benny does it, but I do that from time to time. But the other half of this is that, you know, this really kind of gives us the tried and true prelude. For the most part, if all you want to do is read the button and all you want to know is what you need to read in order to read the button, in order to understand the button, well, then you've got DC Universe Rebirth #1 and this, and that's really it. But for me, I like the little tidbits, the little goodies that we get, you know, throughout DC Universe Rebirth. So I would say there's like a handful of issues with Superman, and there's some Action Comics stuff, and there's some Batman stuff, and I'll have a playlist. It'll basically have all the things that we need in order to understand what's going on. You know, for example, Trinity #8, Superman Aftermath, or Superman Reborn Aftermath, deals with the fallout of the whole thing, Mr. Oz and all that kind of good stuff. But in terms of just focusing on the button and the Batman's Flash landscape, it's just DC Universe Rebirth #1 and this, and then the Batman Detective Comics and the Flash comics, and that's really it. But one thing to keep in mind is this story really comes out of the DC Rebirth Flash story, which is basically Flash of two worlds, you know, Wally West of two Earths. And what this was, or at least what this did, is it basically gave us the idea that Daniel West was the father of the New 52 Wally West. Now, the reason why this matters is because ever since this revelation took place, it's been on the mind of Wally non-stop, and it even reflects the dreams that he has, right? Like this dream that he's having right now, where he's talking to Daniel. Daniel says, look, you need to study, you need to stay in school, you need to focus on your education, because if you don't, you know, you're going to be like me, you're going to become a killer just like me. Now, the reason why this is so important is because not only is this revelation of Daniel West being the father of Wally West always on the mind of Wally, but Daniel was a guy who gained Speed Force powers and then became a villain. Now, in truth, the way that Daniel's character was written was always designed to be in such a way that it would send him down this path. And that was one of the things that a lot of fans found kind of weird, and really one of those things that kind of alienated some fans of the traditional Reverse Flash role. And what I mean by that is that if you walk up to almost any Flash fan and you say, who do you think the best Reverse Flash is? I would say, and this is really me just kind of spitballing and ballparking, 8 or 9 out of 10 will say Eobard Thawne. That's the definitive Reverse Flash. It's the one they think of. It's the one that was basically reimagined under the writing of Mark Waid, and the post-Crisis on Infinite Earths landscape is the guy who came from the 25th century and just got revenge, or, you know, became a villain of Barry Allen. It's the one that Jeff Johns basically reworked when we learned that Eobard Thawne had basically engineered all the events that led to Barry Allen becoming the Flash in the first place. It's Barry's mortal enemy. And so because of all that development, because of the great little moments that we got in Flashpoint, different things like that, at the end of the day, it was really just Eobard Thawne being solidified as the definitive Reverse Flash. The problem with this is that when New 52 was launched, as good as a lot of the Flash stuff was, when the New 52 was launched and Daniel West was introduced as a guy who basically just gained Speed Force powers, you know, after surviving an explosion, you know, he wasn't really as fast as Barry, but he was still basically a villain. The issue with this is that the way it was done by Francis Manapul, I believe was the one that wrote it at the time, was that it was designed to juxtapose the story of Barry Allen with Daniel West, in the sense that where Barry Allen's past was haunted, or really his life was haunted by the death of his mother when he was young at the hands of Eobard Thawne, Daniel West was haunted by the fact that his father was abusive, and his goal was to go into the past and kill his father. But the string that tied Daniel West and Barry together was the idea that a parent was going to die, a parent in their past was going to die. But again, fans didn't really care for this, they didn't really like it, and so for the most part, Daniel West was relatively short-lived. You know, he was the Reverse Flash, and then fans were like, nope, give us Eobard Thawne or nothing at all. And so the result was that Daniel West really just kind of fell into the background in a lot of different ways. Now, with regards to this little bit here, with Wally gaining the powers of the Flash during the whole Lightning Strikes Twice event, the idea here was that he was afraid that he would become Daniel West. He would become his father. And so because of this, these little moments, you know, this breakfast, for example, that's shared between Barry and his father and Iris really haunts Wally West because of the fact that he looks at the jokes and he looks at the laughs that Barry has with his dad and knows that he can never experience that. Now, this is what's also kind of interesting here is because it is Joshua Williamson basically saying that Barry and Wally aren't that far removed, right? I mean, Barry shares these moments with his dad because he's basically playing catch up. For almost the entirety of his life, from his childhood going into his adult life, his father was essentially framed for a murder that he didn't commit. His father was the one that was more or less forced to take the rap of the death of Nora Allen, Barry's mother, when Reverse Flash Eobard Thawne went back in time and killed her. And so because of this, Barry's never really had time or had a chance to spend these kind of moments with his dad. With Wally, it's similar. His father was a bad guy. His father was presumably killed, or at least seems to have been killed at the very least, just vanished off the radar as far as Wally knows at the moment. And so because of that, he's basically wanting to experience these same moments that Barry experiences with his father. And that's what's kind of cool about this, is because we've all had those moments, right? Like you're a single person, a single guy, or a single girl, and you see couples laughing and carrying on and stuff like that, and you want that. Or maybe you lost a parent when you were younger, and you see other people spending time with their parents, and you want that. Or God forbid, you're a parent who lost a kid, and you're in the same boat. People experience all these different kinds of situations where they say, I wish I had that too. And it's cool because it allows those people who come from that kind of experience to identify with what Wally's doing. And that's why I love the way Joshua Williamson is basically reworking the New 52 Wally West, because instead of just being this young, angsty kid who's angry because the world doesn't understand him, instead, he's now a kid who's trying to find his dad. And that's the coolest thing about this, is because it makes it more visceral, makes it more real, and makes it more personal. And so again, it's really cool to kind of see how this unfolds. But the fact remains here, because these moments are being shared, Wally West effectively just runs. Now, the reason why Joshua Williamson does this, the reason why he injects these little moments where Wally West can't really cope with the situation and just takes off running, is for a couple reasons. The first is because within the story, it gives Wally the ability to clear his head, to basically just kind of sit down and say, look, I need to think things over, I need to mull things over, I can just run around the planet a couple times and be okay. Outside of the story, what is Joshua Williamson doing is basically saying, we're going to be expanding Wally West powers, because the ability of a person to run faster, to be able to do things that they wouldn't normally be able to do when they first become a Flash, is like a muscle, right? The more you do curls, the more you do preacher curls, the more you do bench presses, the more you do squats, the more you do these exercises, the stronger your muscles get. You get these muscles built much the same way that Wally West expands on his powers. The more he uses them, he becomes more in tune with his ability to become a Flash. So it's really subtly just kind of Joshua Williamson, saying, hey, look, this is how Wally's growing in his abilities. Now, ultimately, what we end up learning here is that Wally had done some investigation on his own with regards to the fate of Daniel West. And what he had learned was that Daniel West had basically been imprisoned at Iron Heights and then had been transferred from Iron Heights to Belle Reve Penitentiary. Now, as soon as Barry hears that Daniel West is in Belle Reve, he begins to freak out. And the reason why is because we as comic readers know that Belle Reve is the last stop, man. Belle Reve is where people go when they've been shanghaied into the Suicide Squad. And so because of that, Barry Allen's initial thought is, oh my God, Daniel West is now part of the Suicide Squad. And so because of this, he and Wally basically race off, but this is Joshua Williamson taking things in a different approach, right? Like we would expect Barry and Wally to just kind of race in and then look around, figure out there's nothing there, and then race out. And they would be there for maybe 2 or 3 seconds and nobody would have any idea what's going on. But what Williamson does is he draws on the Justice League versus Suicide Squad. He says, no. All right, this is not just some military base. It's not just some building, some office building somewhere. This is the base of operations for Amanda Waller and the Suicide Squad. Every precaution that can be taken has been taken. And that's the coolest thing, is because Barry says, we can't just run in. Now, he doesn't tell Wally why. He just says, we can't run in. We have to be smart, because if anybody knows that we're here, we're immediately going to be caught. And that's true. Amanda Waller would immediately know that they're there and would immediately kick in safeguards. Now, the cool thing about this is that still happens. And as Joshua Williamson showing us just how capable Amanda Waller is. And that's why I love her character so much, is because she's prepared for almost every eventuality, and she will do whatever it takes to make sure that she comes out on top, even if it means killing everybody around her. The other funny part about this is that where these different guards show up and try to take out Flash and or try to take out Barry Allen and Wally and Barry are able to take them out, but then Wally gets a little cocky. He's like, man, why are you worried about these guys? These are robots, man. They're dudes in metal suits. Like, they're nothing to worry about. And Barry's like, yeah, they're nothing to worry about. She is something to worry about. Enter Amanda Waller. And that's what's crazy, is because we know that Amanda Waller would make no bones about snatching up Barry Allen and Wally West and throwing them into the Suicide Squad. Now, in truth, it probably wouldn't last for very long. I mean, I have a hard time believing that Amanda Waller could force Barry Allen to do anything, but it's possible. It could be done. Barry Allen knows this, and he doesn't really say it in so many words, but he's like, look, if Amanda Waller so chose, she could find a way to neutralize my powers. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but in a couple weeks or in a few months, I'll be coming out of a store or something like that. I'll be, coming out of work as Barry Allen, and then suddenly everything goes black. I wake up in a room somewhere, shackled, unable to vibrate through anything, and Amanda Waller says, welcome to the Suicide Squad. So, it's entirely possible that something like that could happen. And with that in mind, Barry is kind of playing the double role, right? Like, he doesn't want Wally to know what it is that Amanda Waller is actually doing, because if Wally came to the realization that Daniel West had been inducted or been forced onto a team that literally just goes through suicide missions, and the person sending him on those missions doesn't care whether he lives or dies, it would crush Wally. And so because of that, Barry doesn't actually reference the Suicide Squad. He just says, hey, look, if he's part of your little project, then there's going to be hell to pay. But of course, Amanda Waller, being as dubious and being as full of lies as she is basically, look, I don't know what you're talking about. There's nobody named Daniel West here. Now, she's actually telling the truth, but she's not telling the whole truth. And we'll find out what the whole truth is here in a little bit. But with Barry and Wally basically leaving, again, Wally asked the question, what project are you talking about? What is it that they do here? And Barry's like, well, we'll talk about that another time. But if Daniel West was part of Amanda Waller's project, there's a guy who will know. And so what we do is we actually jump to the Australian outback with Digger Harkness. Now, this is cool because this is Joshua Williamson showing us, or really kind of expanding on, how the Suicide Squad functions in a lot of ways. Now, remember, this is DC Rebirth, so a lot of this is new to a lot of different people. And one of the things that people think of when they think of the Suicide Squad is they just bah, 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 bah. They just come in, guns blazing, they just start just shooting everything up. But for the most part, what Joshua Williamson establishes here is that it's not always that way. The Suicide Squad is clandestine espionage first, shoot everything all to pieces second. Digger Harkness is kind of an extension of that. Like, it's basically, Amanda Waller saying, hey, look, there is a group operating out of Australia called the Weaver Clan. We have reason to believe they're developing weapons, or they're in possession of weapons that can neutralize people with superpowers. Go there, infiltrate them, find out if they have something. If they have nothing, say they have nothing, come back, your mission's done. If they have something, make their something our something, and then kill them. But what ends up happening here is that while Digger's asking questions and trying to infiltrate the Weaver Clan, Barry and Wally show up out of nowhere. So they kind of throw a kink in his plans and so on, leading to the three of them being captured by the Weaver Clan proper. Now, the funny thing about this is that Joshua Williamson kind of toys with us a little bit. Like, he plays it fast and loose, right? He's just kind of like, hey, like the Weaver Clan have like this web that just neutralizes Barry's ability to phase through objects, and Wally West can't phase through the thing either. And, of course, Digger Harkness just throws boomerangs. So they're all basically prisoner storytelling. So it's it's kind of cool. I mean, I liked it. I thought it was a great little influx, because when it comes to comic books, it's walking a knife's edge telling us stories. Whenever you're telling a story in comics, there is such a thing as just giving everybody everything, right? Like, there has to be some measure of just us figuring things out on our own. And we'll talk more, talk a little bit more about that when it comes to the ending of the story. But there's also the idea of not leaving everything ambiguous and making people feel like they don't understand anything that's going on. And so because of that, it's just kind of fun. It's a little bit of fun here. Well, for whatever reason, they have, this weird webbing that vibrates at a frequency that Barry Allen can't vibrate through, and Wally West doesn't know how to vibrate through things, and Digger Harkness is just a guy. So they're all pretty much just held captive, and it works, for what it is. Now, of course, what this does is it leads into just a quick little bit of storytelling and a little bit of Williamson just kind of killing time in terms of filling out this comic. What we end up having here is the Weaver Clan freeing Barry Allen and Digger Harkness. Of course, Digger basically saying, hey, look, if your weapons are as solid as you say they are, then kill the Flash, right? If your weapons can kill the Flash, imagine the marketing that you'll get. Hey guys, we have guns that killed the Flash, the fastest man alive. Don't you want to buy them? And then people will just line up to buy those weapons, right? Because of that, it basically allows, Barry and Digger to just kind of run around and, for the Weaver Clan to kind of shoot at them and prove their weapons can hit the fastest man alive. But it all serves as a distraction, because with Wally West, he's not able to vibrate through things simply because of the fact that when he tries, he ends up blowing stuff up. And so when he does try to vibrate, he ends up destroying the bonds and then takes out these members of the Weaver Clan. And so coming to the rescue of Barry and Digger, they're able to take out the Weaver Clan, and that's really the end of that. I mean, it's not a great big huge drawn out thing. It's not like the Weaver Clan will be back. It's nothing like that. They're just taken prisoner, and that's the end of them. And so because of that, we end up having a conversation between Digger and Wally, where Wally basically says, hey, look, Daniel West is my dad, and I just want to know what happened to my dad. Now, this is cool because this is Williamson basically saying, hey, look, Digger Harkness is a guy that throws like really sharp boomerangs, and he's kind of cool depending on what kind of characters you like, but he's also human at the same time, and with his own backstory and his own experiences, he feels where Wally's coming from. And so what he basically says is, look, as far as I know, here's what happened. And so what we're basically told is that the Suicide Squad were sent on a mission. Daniel West basically ended up running a bomb into the ocean and then died in the explosion. Now, there's a little more to it than this. This was covered in Suicide Squad Annual #1. And what had actually happened here is that in the midst of a Suicide Squad mission, under normal circumstances, Amanda Waller cares nothing about bystanders. If bystanders die, let them die, so long as the mission is completed. Daniel West was constantly on this path trying to redeem himself. The last holdout was the fact that in his own origin story, when he wanted to go back in time and kill his abusive father, he kept arguing that was what he was wanting to do. He made the right call. But in terms of a traditional villain as we knew him, he was basically becoming a better person. And so this was like the restorative act. This was basically him trying to become a good guy, restoring people's view of him in terms of being a legit person. And so what ended up happening here is there was a bomb that threatened to destroy a village, and Daniel raced the bomb into the ocean so that it would detonate safely away from everybody else, but was basically sucked into the vortex when he tripped and fell in his attempt to get away. Now, the reason why this happened was because of the fact that Daniel just was not as fast as Barry Allen, and so he wasn't able to get away as fast as Barry Allen would have. The result was that the explosion took place in such a way that we saw like a charred skeletal hand, and the implication was that Daniel West was dead. Now, this is DC basically toying with the idea of, well, maybe he'll come back, and it's really just going through and sampling things. If fans want to see Daniel West return, the possibility's there. DC can make the case and say, well, he can't run as fast as the Flash, so he can't heal as fast as the Flash. So he was basically just healing this entire time, and now he's back. Or it could simply just be that fans don't want him there, and they're like, yeah, no, Daniel West is dead. He died in that explosion in Suicide Squad Annual #1. You remember that? I mean, that would be it, you know? And so again, it allows DC to kind of go both ways, which is a really smart way to play it. The problem is that with Wally learning that his father has effectively been killed, he immediately just races off. Now, this is a really great moment, or a really great exchange between Wally and Barry, simply because of the fact that Wally basically asks the question at the heart of everything. He basically says, look, you know, I idolized my father. I idolized Daniel West. I wanted to be like him. I wanted to be fast. I wanted to be what I thought a hero was. But the one question that he wants to know more than anything else is, why didn't he want to be my father? And is it because there's something wrong with me? This is Wally West with abandonment issues. That's all that is. It's a son that feels abandoned by his father, and it humanizes Wally West so well. But what ends up happening here is Barry says, look, there's nothing wrong with you, and reveals his identity. Now, this is kind of interesting because earlier, essentially what had happened was Barry, in a discussion with his father during breakfast before Wally West had taken off, his father said, look, you should tell Wally and you should tell Iris that you're the Flash. They need to know. They need to be able to trust you, and this would be the ultimate demonstration of trust to reveal to them your own identity. Now, of course, Barry's response to this was always, no, because if somebody knows, realizes that they know who I am, well, then suddenly their motive shifts away from, well, I'm going to take you captive and hold you ransom so that I can get to the Flash. Instead, they'll just say, well, I'm just going to torture you until you tell me the identity of the Flash, and then I'll kill you. And so because of that, it puts them in a much higher level of danger. The other half of this is that Barry basically runs over the entirety of his origin with Wally West. Now, of course, we don't really need to run over that. We have that new origin of Barry already covered here on my channel. But again, it's Barry trying to create trust with Wally. The problem is that Wally's response is, you're a liar. You are a liar and you are a cheat. If you really, really loved Iris, if you really cared about me, you would have trusted us. You would have given us this information. You would have said, these are two people that I can trust. And it makes sense because, for God's sake, Wally and Flash were running side by side. If anything, it would create a stronger friendship between the two of them if Barry did reveal his identity to Wally West. But at the same time, there's also merit to the argument that Barry's making, because Wally West does not have full control of his abilities. Wally West is nowhere near as fast as Barry Allen. He's just not there yet. He will be, but he's just not there yet. And so because of that, if somebody got a hold of Wally, because Wally's young, because he's rash, because he's impulsive, if he let the moment get the better of him, which we've seen it happen, well, then suddenly they start torturing him for the information, for the identity of Barry Allen. And so because of that, Barry's basically trying to play the smart road. He was trying to make the smart decision here. And so what ends up happening is we actually jump back to Iron Heights Penitentiary. And the indication here is that we basically just have the arrival of Eobard Thawne. Now, the idea here, or the implication here, seems to be that Eobard Thawne basically breaks free of the cell that he was being confined in in or the suit that he was being held in. We're not told explicitly how that happens. We're simply just told that it happens. But he basically says that he remembers the whole idea of Thomas Wayne killing him during the events of Flashpoint, and that he's going to get his revenge on Bruce Wayne. Now, this is kind of an interesting scenario in the realm of comics, and this is where we sort of reference the whole idea of the tightrope. Again, this goes directly into, like, it literally segues directly into Batman number 21. But with regards to this whole tightrope of storytelling, this version of Eobard Thawne, the question is why does he remember Flashpoint? Does he remember things before Flashpoint? And so the whole notion here is in terms of him being here in this moment, the fact that he was dead, that he's returned, is Joshua Williamson saying time travel and Eobard Thawne go hand in hand. For the same reason that Eobard Thawne is destined for all eternity to travel into the past and kill Nora Allen, setting in motion the events for Barry to become the Flash, this is always going to happen. He's always going to show up here now. He's always going to be in the present. Everywhere that he's appeared in the realm of DC Comics will always happen. That will always take place because in the future he travels into the past. So again, it's really kind of crazy in terms of how it all unfolds. But the idea here is that, again, this just goes directly into the whole Batman number 21 and into the button event itself. But if you guys are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.